Looks like we're starting this thing live here. Live at 4:30. So, hopefully everybody can hear me. If you can let me know in the chat, that'd be awesome. This is still our third time out, so we're not exactly robust with our sort of understanding of this new OBS software. Last time there were some pitfalls, as we all heard, literally heard. Hi, good, excellent, everybody. Hello, everyone. Hello a third time. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so glad you guys are here. Thank you so much. You can hear. Excellent, excellent. And I will try to keep the chat up at all times this time. Right now, my co-host Chick, she's running a bit behind, but she will be catching up with us. So I will go ahead and kind of handle the station here. And that's all right. And I think Buster 2 is off, so I am here by my lonesome, just ready to do this. So the good news is the show should just run itself simply because there are so many, there is so much to talk about this week. As you can see up here, I have the most prestigious title I could find. It's from Auburn University, and it's storming all over the internet, I'm finding out. I originally found the article actually over at Board Panda, and it's something else, and it's basically a simple math problem, and the link there is actually, I'll go ahead and send the Board Panda link into the chat itself, and hopefully everything is still nice and quiet. Hey Lanessa, hey Bit of Venom, just hey Lenny, hey everybody. Here's the Board Panda one. And then inside the description, I have the University of Auburn. I think I've got the New York Times. It's just over and over again with this math problem. And I'll go ahead and read the Auburn one because it actually explains how the problem is supposed to work. So it's 8 divided by 2. You go from left to right, 8 divided by 2. Then you have a 2 plus 2 in your parents. And it's PIMDAS, which is the... it's an acronym for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, or division, addition, or subtraction. So it's pretty basic math, and what they do is they do the parents first, and then it says number 2, now that the expression inside the parents is simplified, we write the equation as 8 divided by 2 times 4. There are no exponents, so we go to division or multiplication, we go from left to right simplifying it, and they give you the formula right there on the page itself. Pretty easy, right? Or you would think that it would be incredibly easy. But the problem is, no matter if it's Auburn University or the New York Times or it's the Panda article, and it just goes over. I thought the answer was 1, too, Jeremy. But in one of the articles, they actually have two different calculators. One comes up with 1, the number 1, as the answer, and one comes up with the number 16. And as you can see inside of the Auburn University, they come up with the number 16 as well. If you go to number 3 there, if you go inside the link that's the link itself, in fact, I'll go ahead and paste it inside of, if you can't get to it in the description right now, I'll go ahead and paste it inside the live chat right away. So I know it's kind of a nerdy kind of thing and all that, but it has bigger, and I hope they're self-evident, the ramifications of what we're talking about here. And I'm so paranoid, so if anything goes off with the sound, please let me know and I will fix it right away. So, okay, so Chick says okay, so let me try to give her a call. I'm going to ask her if I can call her on Skype. So you can tell that we are a garage band outfit here. Can you guys tell? So no big sponsors. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to give her a ring. So the point is that I'm with Jeremy. I thought it was 1. She is reaching out to me. Great. I'm gonna go ahead and give her a ring. Give her a call.
Hello?
Ooh, hello. How's it going?
Hi, I'm having terrible trouble with my connection. It's not even letting me type. I tried to type you like 5 messages and it wouldn't let me type anything, so I'm having trouble up in here.
Okay, okay. Hey, everybody, can you say in the chat if you can hear Chick, if you can hear her okay? Because I can hear her great on my side. Can everybody hear in the chat? Um, yes, yes. Everybody's basically. I'm going to fill you in. What we're talking about is that insane math problem that is just. Yes, we can hear Chick. Perfect. So, Chick, I'm going to fill you in over the last 5 minutes. We're simply going over that math problem, and I've already filled everybody in. We've got the New York Times, we've got Auburn University. Jeremy and I agree. We thought it was one, but if you go over to the Panda article, it actually has two calculators. One shows the number one, and the one shows or board Panda. And I pasted that in the chat, and I think I pasted the University of Auburn that says 16. I pasted that in the chat. One calculator says one calculator says 16. It looks like it's another Lanny. What was that? Lanny and Laurel or whatever?
Laurel and Yanni.
Yeah, that's it. So we've got another one of those kinds of situations here, only now it's with math. And obviously, yes, it's a right, the answer should be 1. Kyle, correct. Everyone that I talk to agrees about that. Auburn University comes up with 16. At least they have in their breakdown of what I put out here in the chat. They have pictures of two different calculators coming up with. Google Hangouts was shut down on the 1st. And what you have to do is transfer over Theresa Lynch into OBS like we did. And it's an incredibly painful process for the other ME channels, and I wish them Godspeed. It took us a long time to get it, and we still, and those that are here in the chat can attest, it's still easy to mess things up. So if you need any advice, I can certainly guide you to some of the resources that we had to. If you're talking about other ME channels, like McFarland's and other folks, but yeah, it's Google Hangouts is gone forever. So the only way to really stream in any coherent way is to use, from what I know, OBS is pretty much the universal software that everyone's jumping to. All right, but back to topic. So, Chick, obviously the significance to this is it goes back to the, Chris Sinatra, NECS CEO, and it affecting his software. We now know this, we see that it's affecting basic math problems, grade school, I would say junior high or middle school level math. I would say some of the most basic math, and I would say that the problem that this poses obviously is greater than just your calculator being wrong or you getting something wrong on the test. Is that a lot of surprisingly important machines and systems that govern our lives, such as your ATM uses basic algebra and basic arithmetic, all kinds of tax software, software inside of airplanes, buses, any kind of tracking, any kind of geo-tracking, or anything else. So, Chick, this has really, really, really big ramifications. However, this isn't an automatic leap. There is, right, Kyle, we know that. Yep, that's right. And we have the Auburn University that agrees with you. And we went through it, and it's very strange. So I don't know. I have no answer. So, Chick, what's your initial take? I don't want to be alarmist, but it just, to me, this one, because it's math, it's really bothering me.
Well, I think that's the thing, is even the people who lean more towards complete materialism, they trust that the answer will always be the same with a math equation. And we've had a couple of times where math has changed or pi has changed, etc. And that it has huge implications, not just on our modern day life of everything is run on software now, and if you can't rely on the data to be the same, you can't rely on the numbers to be the same. For people that have come from an age where the answer was always the same, we are now in an age where the question may always be the same, but the answer is different. And I think when you have merging realities, it's a problem that we're going to have to face. And it is, to me, the absolute, you know, best example of dissolving consensus, because I think anyone can understand just how confusing this is going to get if we can't rely on any kind of answers staying in, you know, I know that they were saying that some of the calculators are programmed differently and perhaps that's it, but I don't think so because, like I said, pi has changed 2 or 3 times, and then we've seen sacred geometry change, and we've seen the Fibonacci sequence change, and we've seen like a lot of different sequences change. So I don't think that this is just bad programming. I think that there is actually an issue now with reality, or with a system, you know, error, not quite a system crash, but a system-wide error, where we're having problems that have several solutions that are all correct, and our society is just not complicated enough and advanced enough yet to handle that. We really are, you know, from a time where we needed things to be very consistent for the society that we built, and it's not, you know, we have to adapt or we're going to have some serious problems.
I agree 100%. And if we could get some thumbs up in there, it's free, it's easy, it helps us get into, speaking of math, it helps us get into the YouTube algorithm much easier, and it helps us out. We have 62 people watching. I don't know about the three some thumbs down. You can't please everyone. I've had an interesting week. Well, I've had an interesting day on Twitter, so I'm sure it's one or two of those are from those folks. But yes, you are correct. That was a bit of housekeeping. You are correct. And pi is changing. I'll have to check on the Fibonacci. I believe about the Fibonacci. I'll see how far into the Fibonacci sequence it's changed, because I know for a fact that Fibonacci, particularly the lower numbers inside of Fibonacci around 55, 144, and 233, they are paramount for traders in the stock market. So that would be interesting. Now, most of the stock market is machine trading anyway. Human beings hardly trade the stock market anymore anyway. So that in itself could be a cascading change, and that's why we might be seeing a less volatile switch over into these kinds of new. It's almost as if I get the feeling, Chick, the idea of a qubit, that it's a quantum bit like Geordie Rose talks about, where something can be a 1 and a 0 at the same time and somehow work. And that's essentially what quantum computers do. They rely on qubits, and that's where he literally says, in one version, in one dimension, it's a 0, in the next dimension over, it's a 1. They lay those over top of each other, and being able to be a 1 and a 0 at the same time, your calculating prowess goes up like exponentially. So, it's right, Jeremy. For 1 second, I had to turn the software over, and you did, and you were able to hear the echo back, and I turned that off immediately. Like we said, we're still getting used to this software. You have to be fairly sophisticated to get it down. Now, we're starting to get it down, but there are some elements to it that even on my third run, I'm still not the best at. So anyway, and you have to actually do a bit of programming before each show now. It's not just to hit a button and you write in your title and that's it. You actually have to do a little CSS programming too is involved. But anyway, the point is, it's getting incredibly strange, and it's getting to where we are entering almost that kind of qubit world on a broader scale, where it can be a 1 and a 0 at the same time. It can be Lanny and Laurel at the same time, and yet somehow we've not had a catastrophe, because if you're going to have something like this in at the basic level, surely this would have cascaded into something much bigger and much broader in terms of major systems crashing. And so far, all we've had is basically the internet going nuts over this calculation, like it did Lanny and Laurel. Yanny and Laurel. I don't know why I can't say that right. It's very odd. But for some reason, Chick, this calculation should be very troublesome for a lot of systems. It really, 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 really. And it's not. It's not troublesome at all. So far of what we've seen, we haven't seen systems crash. We haven't seen cascading failures in terms of communications, or heaven's sakes, in life and death systems. So I don't know, but it's
Well,
real.
yes, it is, but it actually, and just as Call for Zero mentioned in the chat right there, the Millennium Bug, it's the same thing as when a war starts or when a natural disaster like wallops the world. We just shift away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be even with math, and by 2K and everything was going to go crazy. How come every time everything is definitely going to go crazy, it doesn't go crazy? It's the same Mandela effect situation as with, Trump and the UAPs, and how he was opening up about it and then he wasn't. And then you looked at the interview, from a few weeks ago, and he was saying something different than what he was saying on the timeline where you first observed it. And I honestly think that this math thing is causing enormous problems. It's just that we are not seeing the brunt of those problems, because the transition from going from a linear society to a qubit society, I mean, that's a turning of ages things, because the ancient Egyptians used qubits, and what they used to say was, oh, the Egyptians just weren't very good at measuring. That's why the pyramids aren't exactly lined up with, Sirius and Orion like they're supposed to be, and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't know the factors of the size of the Earth changing, the distance between the stars and the Earth changing, and math itself changing. And like, now that we have a better grip on reality, it's possible that the societies that were able to function with qubits as a measurement did understand these things. And it's actually possible that we'll have to try and figure out what they were doing and apply it to what we're doing now, because like I said, there's a lot of people that are not ready to switch over in one lifetime from one set of reality to having to live like a quantum computer, basically, where everything is happening to you all at the same time and there's various correct answers.
Exactly, and well said, and point taken. Now, the counter argument that someone made to me, someone very smart, made to me, was that, well, maybe it was this way and we're just finding out about it, essentially was the argument. And I'm probably butchering it, but ultimately, if you break it down, that was the argument. And because we have um, a wider stage of information to choose from, that's why we're picking up on these kinds of things, including the Mandela effect. And I was saying, well, the problem is, I'm young enough that digital calculators have existed my entire life. So this should have been picked up on 40 plus years ago, the way in which people use calculators. And when I was growing up, you couldn't use calculators until way, way, way later on into your schooling. So I know that, this is very, very basic math that we're talking about. And certainly, kids, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I would say pre-internet, probably used calculators for their math for homework and things like that, this kind of math. But I think something like this would have been picked up and talked about. And the two, and from, if you go over not to Auburn or to the New York Times, I believe it was, yeah, Board Panda. And if you scroll down and actually look at the calculators, it's right there in front of you. And I believe they're old calculators too. So these calculators are from that time period that people actually had to use those calculators in their homework. And so I don't know. Or if you had a really cool math teacher, whatever, quote unquote cool math teacher, they would let you use a calculator, particularly if the test was in a real time crunch and there was a lot of, or if it was a pop quiz. Sometimes we were allowed to use calculators, but generally not. But anyway, that's a sidetrack. The point being is that this is a big deal, and perhaps we are seeing. You're right. And that's just it. And that's the whole point of what I was trying to do and what we're trying to do and what we've talked about ad nauseum with the channel is do more than just Mandela effects to try to see if there are things like this, because this is very much a Mandela effect in that it isn't changing of a movie line or anything like that, but the Mandela effect, it represents a non-linear understanding of our reality. It's a contiguous reality. that means there are breaks in that particular reality. And there are breaks within those subsets within those breaks. And within those breaks, I'm almost sounding like I'm a poet laureate from the school of Donald Rumsfeld Foreign Affairs. But anyway, there are breaks within those breaks and known unknowns. Stupid joke. Anyway, it just looks as if we're getting deeper and deeper. And we have Chris Sinatra, the CEO over at ECS, and I believe that he probably uses a more traditional database structure, and his data now and he speaks about it, and he has a new video out right now talking about different Mandela effects, and he's switching his channel over into a more Mandela effect related channel, and he's talking about how it's affecting his data and how it's affecting his business. So, right, and Chick just put up how deeper into pi, how it changes. So, that is a fallout that we're seeing, is that in the food industry, we are seeing this. So who knows?
Yeah. I'm like, I always get a little bit concerned when it comes to math. One, it's not, my strongest suit, but I do enjoy it. But secondly, just how many calculations, like you said, how many different things are actually not just important or not just convenient, but life and death. And I mean, there was people joking on the Board Panda website about, spaceships crashing because they get the calculations wrong and things like that. And I know what they're referring to is something entirely different, where it was a confusion between kilometers and miles. But it's still not so much focusing on that, but focusing on just how important it is for medical equipment to work properly, for even construction equipment to work properly, for these driverless cars to work properly, for all of these things that are automated, which is about, like half the system is automated by now, not counting quantum computers. What are the computers supposed to do if they're not quantum computers and they can't calculate one correct answer?
I don't know. I mean, these are absolutely terrifying. These are terrifying propositions. I mean, all of these things. And again, the channel is about not these things. But, I mean, it bothers me. It bothers me in a profound way. And it makes me want to say, if by chance that, we aren't kooks, we're all not imagining this. If people are out there and this is real, I hope they stop before it goes too far, and something isn't fixable, and something we can't adjust. It's bad enough we have this. We're already dealing with this kind of disharmony. It's bad enough, and I don't want it to go any farther. If indeed this is the case, it's almost one of these. It could be so bad, Chick. I almost hope we're kooks. And we're overreacting to something. But the problem is, you have the Yanny Laurel thing, you have this, and all of these things, they talk about a dissolving consensus. Consensus reality is what we're talking about. And by consensus reality, it's a reality that you cannot question. The underpinnings of reality you cannot question. Like Jeremy and I versus Auburn University. There is no... And I understand people are saying that math is a belief system, and I understand all of those things. But at math at this level, that's so basic, you can take rocks and literally physical rocks and do the math with the rocks and take away the rocks. That's the level of math. When you get to that level, it's and someone asked me if I can turn up my audio. Yeah, when I learn to do that, I will turn it up, yes. But until then, I don't. I'm doing the best I can here, so I'm sorry. That's the next thing we'll work on then. I appreciate the feedback, everybody. So I will try to look for an article on that. So, Chick, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And yet I'm still intrigued because we still have the wormhole vortex, and there's still one side of me that goes, oh, I want to see that. But I'm like, well, if the ramifications of having a wormhole vortex pattern is things like this, then I don't want it.
I think that's although linear as well, because you're saying, well, if B doesn't happen along A, then you won't get C. But the situation is you're point A and you have 40 something different points all coming out from point A. And because time isn't linear, the ramifications are going forwards and backwards. So we're not even in a situation anymore where we can say, no, let's not do one thing and it'll change everything. Unfortunately, it's like the Schrodinger's cat is out of the bag, and whether it's CERN or whether it's natural or whether it's whatever it is, we just need to create thought processes that are complex enough to deal with quantum situations. That's the unfortunate part of all this, is that we're going to have to update our minds for quantum computing, because
Yeah.
the computer came from the mind, and it can't outrun the mind because we're the ones programming. So we are the ones that need to step up right now. And of course, that's very difficult for people to do, because the average person is just going to say, well, there's one correct answer and it's the answer that I know.
Right.
And that's it. And they're not able, even if you give them evidence, to open their minds and say, oh my gosh, there's 2 or 3 correct answers for this. And like Eileen Colts in the chat is making some really good points of like that perhaps the system or the matrix or the more complex mathematical structures out there, which are a little bit beyond our grasp but coming into view, are giving us a knock on the head and telling us our systems aren't perfect. And now that reality is kind of moving into this crazed outward spiral, we're going to come into contact with these kind of not just math problems, but reality situations that require a much broader, much more open-minded situation. I mean, it even to me ties in with UAP technology, where they're doing things that we're saying can't be done. And obviously the situation is reality is showing us you can follow a total chain of thought, say chain of thought A versus chain of thought B, and both end up with correct answers. And those two things, it's not mutually exclusive, and they don't even have to cross over. Because I'm seeing like two different types of, formulas of math people are using and arriving at different answers, and they're both correct. Well, I'm just saying on a different level, just like the spaceship that would be going from Washington to LA in 9 minutes. We'd say it can't be done. It's already being done, and it's in front of us. So therefore, the answer is not it can't be done. The answer is we need to figure out what they're doing, because obviously it can be done, and perhaps it can even be done several different ways, perhaps even in ways that they haven't figured out.
And I like that. I like what you said there about the 9-minute trip there, going from the East Coast to the West Coast in 9 minutes, which with our consensus reality, we would be splattered inside of whatever craft that is. So how about this maybe? Perhaps it's the fact that we think, I call it dissolving consensus, because I'm still at base state of back in Sagittarius. We're no longer there. We're in Orion. So it's not that it's a dissolving consensus. It's a consensus that's evolving. Perhaps we could try to be positive, and that it is changing. So therefore, perhaps our expectations of what is possible needs to change with it. And perhaps one day there will be this idea of saying that there was one answer. There is no wrong answer in quite a literal fashion, particularly with some of the technology that has been leaked out, some of the technology that you hear rumors about, some of the technology that may be UAP related. And then if we talk about the consciousness from the gateway process, where consciousness does come first, is there some kind of strange harmony happening where indeed some of those things, like medieval thinking, people thought a certain way in the Dark Ages or the medieval times, and they thought the world was a certain way. And how many paradigm shifts have we had, or jumps in evolution have we had in terms of thinking since then? And I know that's kind of a trigger word when I say evolution, but I mean it in like the literal sense. I didn't mean it in like Darwinian evolution. I meant it in terms of progress, and again, another trigger word, moving forward. I'm talking about a change in something. And what it is, hopefully, it's not all negative, I hope. And as we live in a qubit world or a quantum world like you're talking about, perhaps it doesn't have to be that one answer. Now, naturally, if you talk about the humanities, that has always been the case post World War II in terms of the softer sciences, such as like a social science or psychology and all of those kinds of things. It was a real trial and error. But in some of the harder sciences, it was actually more settled, particularly in things like basic math and arithmetic and algebra and things like that. If that starts to become something that is debatable, like it is like we're having right now, the early debates like this, if that becomes something that is debatable, then indeed, perhaps the limitations, we could start to look at it at this time that we grew up in terms of we call it a stable form of mathematics, or a stable form of the properties that create physics in this reality. And as the technology advances beyond what we knew that then into something else new, we'll suddenly understand, okay, that was old thinking. We know, just like in the quantum world, it doesn't work like the Newtonian world. And then we'll also have an understanding of math in that way as well. Because now we've introduced this quantum world into our lives. And we've introduced it into our mind. And we're really not being true to kind of this mission statement we've set up on the channel, that mind does come first. And if you've convinced your mind that it can be in a qubit state, if you've convinced your mind that you can be 1 and 0 at the same time, or 1 and 9 like someone mentioned, I think Lanessa, whatever the two numbers are, that you can be simultaneously two things at once, and your calculators can show those things, then certainly it's a leap. It's different. It's a different kind of thinking. It's a quantum way of thinking. And indeed, perhaps if we do that, and that's all because I personally think, and this is my speculation, I have no proof, it's because of the technology that's being introduced, whether it's D-Wave, whether it's CERN, whether it's some of the UAP whisperings you hear that's out there that bends time and space, in order to basically go from DC to Los Angeles in 9 minutes. That it literally bends time and space, just like in a science fiction movie. In those science fiction movies, out of all the people on YouTube that were saying that there's some hidden symbology behind it to get us prepped for, the coming whatever, perhaps there was a hint of truth in that we were, we were able to imagine it, and now we have, and here it is. I don't know.
No, go ahead.
I know 91 are watching, and we have 27 thumbs up. If we can get more thumbs up, that would be great. It's free. It helps us with the algorithm, and it's wonderful. We also have our super chats. All of our super chats go towards this webpage we want to build. We want to build a consistent library. We want to build my vision is to have some kind of 24-hour chat where people can go in and talk about subjects like this freely and with any kind of information they want. And then alongside that, also have a regular web page as well. So that's the vision for now. Thank you for the thumbs up. They're going up finally. Thank you very much. And so, all right. Anyway, sorry. You were saying, and before I rudely interrupted you.
No, I interrupted you on accident. I'm sorry. I was just saying one thing that we're not afflicted with so much with technology becoming so accessible now is experts. And I think that for a long time, the politics and top experts were ones that quashed other theories and other answers, whether correct or not, because they liked the theories and answers that they had. And I think now they don't quite have that power to set reality. They used to be the ones who were making the publications who were saying this is the way it is, and anyone with alternate research was just slammed by the scientific community or the math community or whatever community it may be. And now with the internet, they don't get to do that. The story is out, within an hour, it's across the entire world and people are doing the math for themselves, and they're not able to kind of force things to be more linear, which is something that possibly they were doing. But I also at the same time believe that reality was more linear, so it worked. Whereas now, obviously, that doesn't work at all. And as far as like a qubit mind, I thought that was such a good point that you brought up. I think that we have that, and our education system actually completely de-wires or wires your brain entirely in the wrong way for dealing with actual reality. I think that in all honesty, when you're a very young kid and your mind is so pliable and so able to come up with anything and be open to any kind of idea that the adults tell you is reality, you'll accept it and it'll become reality for you. I think that we were born with the innate ability to be able to be one and zero at the same time. And that's something that this system tries to take from you. It tries to convince you, no, this is what the reality is because that's what the school teacher says or that's what the professor at college says. When in fact, those people have no idea what they're talking about. They have no grasp on reality. They have never seen a Mandela effect change in their whole life. They have no idea what they're talking about.
They don't. And so, thank you, King TL. I appreciate it. I said keep up the great work. Thank you so much for the super chat. And Guardian Matrix brought up a good point, saying, isn't cognitive dissonance the state of mind of being 1 and 0 at the same time? Yes, and that's a battle of definitions then. And rewiring, like you're talking about, from our schooling, rewiring some of these definitions, and that's what we try to check out here and try to talk about here. And maybe turning that from, a lot of times, social scientists we've seen it. They will take something that is very negative and give it 30, 40, 50 years, and they slowly boil the frog and it becomes a positive thing to the point to where it's a very positive thing. Now, imagine being able to take something like a phrase like cognitive dissonance and being able to slowly turn that to where you can be both of those things at the same time. And having a belief system in terms of the foundational parts of your belief system. And I don't want to conflate belief systems with your moral and your ethics. You can still have morality in your ethics, but I'm talking about your beliefs in terms of like basic mathematics. That's what I'm talking about. So I don't want anyone to, conflate the two. I'm talking about our basic understanding of how this world works and being able to be more quantum about it, being more flexible about it, understanding that there's more to it. And I think all of the confusion, all the other things that we see here on YouTube, everywhere else in the world, all of the confusion that's out there, all of the frustration, all of it is because down below, way down there, way down in the substrata, these things are happening, they're changing, and people have no idea how to deal with them. They haven't even been able to verbalize them yet. And yet they're if we're able to verbalize it and like lightning bolts, we're all focused in on it. I see a lot of the same people week after week, and we're all usually on the same bandwidth, understanding what this is all about. And we understand what's going on and the ramifications of this. And still yet, we could easily turn this into a station where the world is ending literally every show. There's millions of YouTube channels out there that are just like that. And they get you worked up that every show it's the end of the world. And certainly, if they were to concentrate on subjects like this and understand subjects like this, they certainly would have been able to build up something like this and they would able, because we're able to put together the fact that if the foundations of mathematics, right, exactly, it is fear. I don't want to say the word because I know Lord Frybread. It is that. It is fear. Yes. Anyway, everyone can read it in the live chat. It is that, and I don't know if the algorithm, I'm so paranoid of it, but it is that. And those stations, fortunately, they probably don't pick up on things like this because, you have to follow through with that math is basically the core foundation of most of the systems that they work with, and they probably don't understand that, which is a good thing, because if they understood those kinds of things, it would probably pretty negative for their audience, because they probably have scared their audience to death anyway. But what we're trying to do is say, can we work with something like this And so far these systems relatively, I know Facebook goes down every now and then and all of those other things, but I don't I don't think it's from these kinds of things. I think these conditions are created from technological changes, and I think these conditions are created as side effects. They could be something that they're trying in order, on a fundamental level, on a binary level of reality. But I think things like this are happening as a side effect to either a UAP kind of situation or something with D-Wave or something with CERN or something with all of those things put together. I mean, Geordie Rose, there was a video recently I saw. It's a new one with him, and he is, and I should have got the link for that. He is literally explaining in more plain terms exactly how they are, quote, borrowing resources from the version of reality, the dimension, the next over dimension. And to me, that sounds like colonization of resources. It's a new kind of colonization. Because what was happening back in the colonial era, they were quote unquote bothering or borrowing resources, let's say, and I'm putting that in quotes and I'm saying that's snarky. They were borrowing resources from the continents that were just the next one over. That's exactly what we're doing to a dimension. And if that dimension happens to be a bit more technologically developed than we are, they may not they may not be very happy about that. And all of this could tie in together to something with the UAP thing. Who knows? Of course, I'm just speculating, Chick.
I think that is quite something that I've certainly talked about before, because there were different realities where, obviously different things happened, especially around a certain event in 2001 was something that people were talking about a lot in regards to exactly what you're talking about there, about things going missing from one reality to another. And was it possible that they actually could steal things from a reality that's right next door, or if that was, wild conjecture and speculation. And it was just like this thing about how they were saying that underneath the trade centers, there was actually an enormous amount of gold bars that all went missing, and that there was talk about how that hadn't existed in the Sagittarius reality and it had existed in the Orion reality, and no one knows where that went. And then there was some other, and I was like, that's some very, very complicated, things to even start trying to think about, of taking things from a mirror reality. How would that even be investigated? Like, how would that even be, that, to me, that's definitely a new area for the law to look at, of how one would even approach such a thing. But just what someone in the chat was saying before about cognitive dissonance being a 0 and a 1, I thought that was an excellent point, because I was like thinking about it, and like, of course, cognitive dissonance is so prevalent today, and there's been a lot of time and research, and I mean a lot, not just in regards to Montauk and in regards to the gateway process, but all across the board, of how we work, of how our minds work truly, so that those things could be weaponized. And cognitive dissonance is qubit reality weaponized, because you're using the possibility of being two things at once to jam the brain system into a situation where it's contradicting itself, where it's gone into a state of madness. And I think that that's something that a lot of us can see. People are repeating different, talking points of whatever it is that they believe in, on any side, not even taking a side here, just looking at freaking the behavior of people that you see on social media in regards to anything, whether it's pop stars or the environment or whatever it is. People's thinking structures have become very strange and very repetitive. And I think that it is a situation where they've gone through a lot of schooling. It's definitely kind of had an effect on how they think. And anyone that wants to know that, have a conversation with a child that hasn't started school yet, and have a conversation with someone that's just graduated school, and you'll see that one is very much flattened in spirit and very much flattened in the possibilities of what's possible, and the other one is completely open and ready for anything. So when you see somebody come out worse than when they went into any situation, you have to say, what is going on there? And then also, like I said, in any situation where these things can be weaponized, it was something that was obviously understood that we could fall into a qubit reality quite easily. And it was like, how can you take that to actually jam people up and make them less effective at figuring out the environment around them? Because the less they can figure out, the more you can tell them what the environment around them is.
Well said. Well said. And I concur. And someone mentioned the JFK, let's say, incident. And I can tell you, and Chick knows that Buster found for us in the U.S. archives, I believe it was the Warren Report, now says that, in fact, they mentioned a second shooter. So we have, I think it's somewhere around 6 months ago, we have um, we have both the Warren Report and we have the Bill Clinton archives that mentioned Ed McMahon. So a lot of things that are starting to happen in terms of retrocausality and changes. And I didn't, I know that seems like a side thing, but I know people were bringing up JFK. And I just wanted to address that with people, that we do have some of the paperwork for that, and we do have the links. And hopefully they haven't changed again, because things have flip-flopped. Time is moving on so fast. So what's up with what you found with this magnetic vortex wormhole generator that has a U.S. live patent as of, and it's very recent, 2002? Chick, you found it. What I read it. It reads like science fiction on meth meets like something out of like Battlestar Galactica, or I don't know. It's just the weirdest. Just talk to me about what are we looking at here? And it's up on the screen, and the link is also in the description as well. What are we talking about here?
Well, so I was on Twitter, just, doing the usual, doing the rounds, whatever, and looking at different articles and looking at things of interest. And this Twitter account that I follow, called Raymond, and I can't pronounce his second name because it's very long and very, I'm not even sure which language. But anyways, credit to him for finding these patents. I saw on his page these patents, and then I started to explore them. And there's actually a crazy amount of patents that really explain a lot of UAP technology and how it works. And it's crazy that these are publicly available. You can click on the links, you can go and have a look at them and get a deeper understanding of how these things, how on earth they even, how does their propulsion work? How do they fly? How does this happen? And in this particular patent, the magnetic vortex wormhole generator, it goes into inertia, and it's basically, let me read this a little bit here. This energy finds many applications in new types of power supplies, inertialess and massless spacecraft, vehicles that can travel light years by moving out of dimension through hyperspace, surgeryless medical tables, cranes for lifting heavy objects, etc. He's going through like all the things that you could use this technology for, the magnetic vortex wormhole generator. And I feel like this in particular caught my eye because it's obviously somebody has figured out how the Bermuda Triangle and the Weil vortices work. And they have now a generator where you can make a magnetic vortex wormhole to power, just as it says here, inertialess, massless spacecraft and vehicles that can travel light years by moving out of dimension through hyperspace. How could that not be more connected to UAPs, Mandela effect, Weil vortices, like all the things that we talk about here? And like you said, this is a patent from 2002, and there's a number of patents that are almost exactly along similar lines, except they've been like, some of them are from Germany and some of them are from, all these random places. And it makes me wonder if the technology was, reverse engineered, discovered, and then they had, certain people in place around the world to put these patents up, so it doesn't look like it's all coming from the same source. But I honestly think this is coming from the same source. I think that this is from the US and that they've figured out how the technology works, and it's almost working along the same lines of, magic, as they do in advertisement, is they have to put it out there somewhere where you could get it to make sure that you're kind of consenting to this, which is, and I know that how wild that might sound to some people, but literally every crazy thing that's going on is publicly available somewhere, because it's almost as if this system isn't allowed to do it unless it's right under your nose and you just kind of see it with your subconscious mind and go along with it, and then they're able to make it happen. But very few things are completely draped in shadow. It's almost like if you don't share it with the consensus, or sorry, if you don't share it with the population and don't get their consensus, then you don't get their co-creative or co-decisive role as an observer in this to actually make it reality.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And what backs that up is Gateway. It talks about being careful and taking care to not make major changes to the subjective reality around you, the co-created reality around you, or you could face dislocation. And by putting out things like this to maybe perhaps a selective audience, and we may be inadvertently adding to this right now, this very second, to this audience by accident, and we're in a catch-22. We can't be, unfortunately, a 0 and a 1 at the same time. We either present this to you or we don't. Although I don't know any way else around this to communicate this to people, but just the very fact that we're doing this is we're introducing the possibility of it into your life, and by doing that, I have a feeling as if it's able to mine or extract something from you by you being exposed to something like this. They've already extracted it by you, even us. Thank you, Sensei Dennis. Appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. By even just showing this to you, it's something is being mined and extracted, and whether it is consent or anything else. And I've often thought the reason why these kinds of things seem to be jumping, Chick, since we've been talking now for 1 year, we've gone from those basic MEs to hyperdrive, bizarre, let's see here, magnetic vortex wormhole generator. And that is a U.S. patent, Chick. We had
Yes.
the gateway process talking about aliens without bodies. And we've done a pardon the expression, a quantum leap from a year ago till now. It's been mind-blowing if you think about the short period of time. And I understand that the more you dig for these things, the better you get at these kinds of things, the more you're able to, you just get better at what you do if you do it long enough. I understand that. And at a certain point, all of us became proficient and researchers, and we became proficient magnets for this kind of thing. However, that aside, and patting ourselves on the back aside, these kinds of things I don't think existed in the original year ago reality where you had magnetic vortex wormhole generators, or NASA writing articles about portals from the sun touching down on the planet, or Schumann Resonance spikes, supposed to be 7.83, spiking to 70. I'm feeling sick. I happen to see the spike. And then I'm able to find from the National Institutes of Health, as well as Cornell University, doing studies on Schumann spikes on the human body. Now, I know someone brought up before the Schumann spikes are sort of like the weather. There are only certain areas where the spikes themselves actually affect when it's a spike. And I haven't seen anything in the literature that actually says that in terms of affecting the human body. It didn't mention it in the article in the National Institute, the NIH, National Health Institute. It also didn't mention it in the linear notes of the Cornell University study that they're doing with blood pressure and that. So if it is, I don't see it yet. I've read everything I can on it. Even if it is localized, if you catch it between the ionosphere membrane and the soil, it's still probably going to have some sort of reverberation that isn't entirely localized, I would imagine. Now, I'm not if I'm wrong, I always say I'm wrong. Like the nasal cavity thing this week, I was so convinced on this show I was going to lead with that. I'm going to talk about the new change in the skull. And there's this, I never knew there were nasal cavities, up above our eyebrows. And I talked to our medical doctor, and he absolutely said this is not 100% is not a Mandela effect. So I was sad. However, this now why worry about that when you have basic math formulas not working and calculators disagreeing, and you have magnetic vortex wormhole generators. That really, it does sound like crazy sci-fi. Am I wrong here?
No, you're not wrong. And also, um, I didn't have sinus cavities above my eyebrows either. So, in all honesty, for different people from different realities, they'll
Mm-hmm.
have something that's been there their whole life, and the person next to them, it'll be brand new for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a just because 100 people say it's not a Mandela effect, even if they're affected, it may just be that it's not a flip flop for them or it's not a change for them, but it can still be a change. Like I was talking to somebody from the Capricorn arm, and they all kinds of things that are very strange to me are very normal to her. So it's just like this is the mystery of this whole thing is just how malleable and how weird all of this is. Um,
And not
yes.
one thing, is like, the death nail where you're like, oh my gosh, it's all here. We're adding bricks, we're adding logs to the fire. It goes week after week, day after day, tweet after tweet, article after article, and you finally get this rich mosaic where you're like, man, something is weird and off. Something is just weird. And there was someone made a great comment just now. And while I was talking, this is right up our alley. And Lanessa, this is why we cite you a lot. Did Alice project her own wonderland, or was she just in astral travel? That's brilliant, because according to Gateway, that was she was doing her own projection. However, Gateway also says that we have an existing reality, then you can only shape so much yourself through patterning. So now I'm like, maybe it was something a bit off or a bit different. And I wouldn't go necessarily directly for the astral thing. What I would go for, she shifted. She shifted hard, and not just one reality over. She shifted about 50, 100 realities over is where I would put that. What say you, Chick? Because that's like your thing.
Exactly. I mean, for those of you that never saw a Cheshire Cat moon until you shifted to Orion, you know exactly what happened. And most of us never did. It's called a wet moon or a Cheshire Cat moon, and it's when the sliver of the moon is on the bottom, so it looks like a smile. And most people in the Sagittarius arm never have ever seen one of those because the phasing of the moon would go, from one side to the other. It wouldn't go from top to bottom ever. But here it's able to go from top to bottom to side to like whatever. And I think that that was a huge hint, Lewis Carroll style right there, of what the connections could be. I mean, one of the most central lines that really points out, one of the big questions is, who are you? That is the greatest puzzle. And that's like a quote from the book. It's like, and that is, and it's even central to this whole Mandela effect question right here is, who are you in all this and what are you seeing? And is it giving you hints about the reality of who you really are in this whole situation? And I think once we figure that out, I don't think this will be quite as mysterious as it was in the beginning.
And I think this math thing, one of why it's, the people are if you go on Twitter, they're acting really violently towards it in terms of just the mental convulsions that they're going towards, about whether or not it's supposed to be what it's supposed to be. And I think a lot of it has to do with a sense of what you were just talking about. Who are you? A sense of self. I have to have this mask of self that I've created for myself based on the exterior stimuli that has been given to me throughout my entire life. And oftentimes people will use their education, they will use a lot of those things to help create their identity. and it will help. It'll be a massive part of what and who they are. And a lot of people invoked their authority with this math thing. In fact, I think it was the Times, New York Times. Maybe it was the New York Times. There were so many articles on it. One of them was saying that people were invoking their math degrees, and other people were also invoking it with the two different numbers. And what you really had was a crisis of identity. And it really, oftentimes it's if you those of us that know, we're almost very blessed. At first I thought this was a curse, but as this thing ramps up, I feel very blessed because I know it's happening, so I'm much calmer. If this comes out of the blue for you, and something as basic as this, we're talking, like I said, junior high school or middle school, whatever you want to call it, before you get to high school kind of math, and you're dealing with this, and it's out of nowhere. This is some base stuff for your identity. And a lot of people are very proud of their IQ, their education, their background, where they hobnob, all of those things. And this could upset all of those things. This is truly something that I think is really hit a nerve. Because the Laurel Yanni thing, that was just fun and interesting. Or that dress, was it silver? Was it blue? All of those things are kind of funny. I'm feeling it. I can feel the intensity. You've got Auburn University commenting on it in the last 2 days. It's already gone to the very top of academia. It's already there. So we're dealing with very serious, fundamental things about characteristics of people's inner selves, their inner worlds, and the way that they present themselves to the world. Because oftentimes I find that kind of identity, particularly whenever you really lean on, let's say, your education or something like that. It comes from, to me, it seems, because particularly in the corporate world, it's like a coping and a compensation mechanism. So people will just back off, so you don't have to argue with them or something like that. So, and I'm no psychologist. I just know that they'll be in a corner about something, and immediately they'll invoke something like this. And immediately people were doing it in these articles as they were battling each other, and on Twitter as they were battling each other about this. It was nuts. And I don't know. I hope people would start opening their minds to alternative thinking. Right, Carol. And we're going to get to you with that. It's going to be very fun and very interesting, Carol. It's just weird. It's very odd. So we're at the hour. We try to keep it to an hour. 105 watching. If we could get some more thumbs up. And there you go. Hit Jeremy. More thumbs up, please. And obviously super chats are welcome. I keep promising that I'm going to put up a Patreon and we'll deliver special things for Patreon. But I keep having to deal with issues with OBS and learning the software. So we're still working it out. Hopefully my sound worked. I learned the sound on the fly here with the mixing board while we were doing it. Hopefully everyone can, we've stabilized the sound between myself and Chick while this was happening. So it's a new thing I learned. Chick, any final thoughts here in this as the hour winds down?
First of all, I'm sorry to everyone if you keep turning up your volume for SMQ and then I come in and I'm really loud and hurting your ears. I'm sorry, but we're definitely, he sounds perfect in my headphones, so hopefully he sounds really good volume wise to you too, because I want you to hear what he's saying, because there's just so many points and so many different directions, not just in the show but with what's going on right now. And there's 10 other patents that I have to go through and really become familiar with before the next show, because I just found these yesterday and I didn't have enough time to get into it and really study it. But in all honesty, if they figured out about how to harness the power of a Bile-Borges, well then, that's, to me anyone, on the level of Tesla technology or the Hutchinson effect, which I feel is technology that we really need to embrace, because they very much are close to phenomena that we are dealing with our everyday reality, and that's going to be part of me trying to become more quantum and less linear if possible. But I just for everybody here, like same deal as always. I know we've shifted a lot. I've seen a lot of changes. I'm even getting backlash from some changes on Twitter, which I'm so happy about because I haven't been relevant enough to get backlash in a long time. So, you're making waves when people are getting really angry and going crazy. And I'm like, good, that's making you think, because some people are like following me and agreeing, and other people are screaming and losing their minds. So that's awesome. Hopefully, we can bring more Mandela effects to people, whether it upsets them or not, just to try and push the line a little bit more and get more people asking questions. And I think math is perfect. The more kind of obvious math Mandela effects that come up, I think the more it's going to wake people up, even if they're angry at the start.
Excellent. Okay, folks, so that's it. We're wrapping it up for episode 66 of the Lost and Found Bin. So we have the links in there, and share, like, all of those things, and we appreciate every one of you. And we will see you all, next week, but I'll probably be on sometime during the week. Anyway, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.